We are living through a cognitive bottleneck. The human mind, as it currently operates, is reaching the end of its usefulness. Not because we lack intelligence, but because the intelligence we have is pointed in the wrong direction. The future is not going to punish stupidity. It's going to punish rigidity. And most people are walking straight into obsolescence without realizing it. Let me be clear about something. When I say one type of mind will be rewarded and the rest punished, I'm not talking about IQ. I'm not talking about academic credentials or technical skills or even creativity in the conventional sense. I'm talking about something more fundamental. I'm talking about the structure of cognition itself, the way you process information, the way you relate to uncertainty, the way you handle the dissolution of frameworks that once gave you stability. Most human beings operate with what we might call a crystallized cognitive structure. They build a model of reality early in life. They reinforce it to selective attention and confirmation bias, and they spend the rest of their existence defending that model against anything that threatens it. This is not a character flaw. This is how the brain evolved to function: pattern recognition, category formation, predictive modeling. These are survival mechanisms. They kept our ancestors alive in environments where quick decisions mattered more than nuanced understanding. But here's the critical point. The environment has changed radically, and the cognitive strategies that ensured survival for hundreds of thousands of years are now liabilities. We are living in a world of exponential change, where the half-life of information is collapsing, where technological disruption outpaces institutional adaptation, where the social and economic structures that previous generations could rely on are dissolving in real time. And most people are still operating with Paleolithic cognitive architecture, trying to navigate a post-information age reality. The problem is not that people are unintelligent. The problem is that intelligence itself has been misunderstood. We have confused intelligence with the ability to manipulate known variables within established frameworks. We have confused education with the accumulation of facts. We have confused expertise with the mastery of current paradigms. But none of these things prepare you for what's coming, because what's coming is not an extension of what already exists. It's a phase transition, and phase transitions require a completely different relationship to knowledge, uncertainty, and identity itself. Let's talk about what separates the adaptive mind from the obsolete mind. The obsolete mind seeks certainty. It wants answers. It wants to know what is true and what is false, what is right and what is wrong, what works and what doesn't. It builds epistemological fortresses and defends them. It treats belief systems as possessions. When you challenge someone's beliefs, they experience it as a threat to their identity, because they have fused their sense of self with their conceptual models of reality. The adaptive mind operates differently. It treats beliefs as tools, not as truths. It understands that all models are provisional. All frameworks are temporary. All certainties are illusions created by limited perspective. The adaptive mind is not attached to being right. It is committed to becoming more accurate, and there is a profound difference between those two orientations. Think about how most people engage with information. They encounter a new idea, and the first thing they do is compare it to what they already believe. If it confirms their existing model, they accept it. If it contradicts their existing model, they reject it. This is not thinking. This is pattern matching. And pattern matching is exactly what artificial intelligence excels at. If your cognitive strategy is to absorb information that fits your pre-existing categories and reject information that doesn't, you are functioning as a biological algorithm, and biological algorithms are being outcompeted by digital ones. The mind that will thrive in the coming decades is the mind that can hold multiple contradictory frameworks simultaneously without psychological distress. It's the mind that can navigate ambiguity without collapsing into dogma. It's the mind that treats paradox not as a problem to be solved, but as information about the limits of binary thinking. This is not about being open-minded in some vague liberal sense. This is about cognitive flexibility as a survival trait. Let me give you a concrete example. Consider the way most people relate to their own beliefs about economics, politics, relationships, health, meaning, purpose. They have a story, and that story feels true because it is emotionally coherent. It aligns with their identity. It gives them a sense of orientation in a chaotic world. But coherence is not the same as accuracy. A paranoid delusion is coherent. A conspiracy theory is coherent. Coherence is just internal consistency, and you can be consistently wrong. The adaptive mind recognizes this. It knows that the feeling of certainty is a neurochemical state, not an epistemological fact. It knows that conviction is often inversely proportional to understanding. The less you know about a subject, the more confident you tend to be. This is the Dunning-Kruger effect, and it's not a bug in human cognition. It's a feature. Confidence facilitates action. But in a rapidly changing environment, premature action based on false confidence is catastrophic. What we need now is not more certainty. We need more comfort with uncertainty. We need the ability to act decisively while simultaneously holding our assumptions lightly. This is a psychological skill set that very few people have cultivated because very few people have been required to cultivate it. But that requirement is now non-negotiable. So, how do you develop this capacity? How do you transform a rigid cognitive structure into a flexible one? The first step is recognizing that your thoughts are not you. Your beliefs are not you. Your opinions are not you. These are phenomena that arise within consciousness. They are objects of awareness, not the subject. And once you make that distinction, once you create even a small amount of space between the witness and the witnessed, the entire game changes. Most people are identified with their mental content. They think they are their thoughts. When a thought arises, they believe it. When an emotion arises, they become it. There's no separation. This is what we might call a collapsed state of consciousness. And in a collapsed state, you cannot update your models, because updating your models feels like self-destruction. But if you can cultivate the capacity to observe your thoughts without being absorbed by them, you suddenly have freedom. You can examine a belief and ask, is this actually true, or is this something I was taught? Is this based on evidence, or is this based on identity protection? Does this framework actually map onto reality, or does it just make me feel comfortable? This is where meditation becomes relevant. Not meditation as a spiritual practice or relaxation technique, but meditation as cognitive training. The entire point of meditation is to develop the capacity to observe the contents of consciousness without reactivity. You sit, you watch thoughts arise, you watch them dissolve, you notice the patterns, you notice the repetition, you notice the way the mind generates narratives and then believes those narratives are real. And over time, something shifts. You start to realize that the thoughts you have been defending, the beliefs you have been arguing for, the positions you have been identifying with, are not fundamental. They are contingent. They arose under specific conditions, and they can be updated, modified, or discarded entirely without any loss of self. This is liberation. Not in some mystical sense, but in a very practical sense. You are no longer imprisoned by your own cognitive habits. You are no longer enslaved by the need to be consistent with who you were yesterday. You can evolve in real time. Now, let's extend this to the collective level. We are entering an era where institutions are failing, where traditional authorities are losing credibility, where the social narratives that once unified large groups of people are fragmenting. This is disorienting. This is destabilizing. And the default response is to cling to certainty. People retreat into ideological bunkers. They join movements that promise clear answers. They adopt rigid identities that give them a sense of belonging and purpose. But this is a trap. Because rigid identity in a fluid environment is a death sentence. The future does not care about your ideology. It does not care about your preferred narrative. It does not care about what you want to be true, but it only cares about what is adaptive. And adaptability requires letting go of the psychological security blanket of fixed belief. Here's the uncomfortable truth. The mind that will be rewarded is the mind that can deconstruct itself repeatedly without losing coherence. It's the mind that can move between frameworks without getting stuck in any of them. It's the mind that can function in high ambiguity without grasping for false certainty. And very few people are training for this. Most education systems are still designed to produce specialists, people who know a lot about a narrow domain, people who can execute predefined tasks with precision. But specialization is a declining asset because specialized knowledge becomes obsolete faster than it can be acquired. What matters now is the ability to learn, unlearn, and relearn. What matters is cognitive agility, and cognitive agility is not something you can teach in a classroom. It's something you develop through repeated exposure to novelty, uncertainty, and the dissolution of assumptions. You have to deliberately put yourself in situations where your models fail. You have to seek out perspectives that contradict your own. You have to engage with ideas that make you uncomfortable. Not because discomfort is valuable in itself, but because discomfort is the signal that you are encountering the limits of your current understanding. Now let's talk about what makes this moment in history unique. We are not just experiencing incremental change, we are experiencing the early stages of an intelligence explosion. Artificial intelligence is not just a tool, it's a fundamental shift in the nature of cognition on this planet. For the first time in history, we have created systems that can process information, recognize patterns, generate solutions, and improve themselves faster than biological evolution can respond. This has profound implications. The vast majority of cognitive tasks that humans currently perform are going to be automated, not in some distant future, in the next 10 to 20 years. And I'm not talking about manual labor. I'm talking about analysis, diagnosis, strategy, design, communication, the things that we have traditionally associated with intelligence. So the question becomes, what is left for the human mind to do? What is the unique value proposition of biological consciousness in a world where artificial systems can outthink us in almost every measurable domain? The answer is not more intelligence in the computational sense. The answer is a different kind of intelligence altogether. The kind of intelligence that can integrate information across incommensurable domains. The kind of intelligence that can generate genuinely novel frameworks rather than just optimizing within existing ones. The kind of intelligence that can navigate value questions, meaning questions, existential questions that have no algorithmic solution. This is the intelligence of consciousness itself, not consciousness as a passive observer, but consciousness as an active participant in the construction of reality. And this is where things get interesting. Because if you take seriously the possibility that consciousness is not an epiphenomenon of brain activity, but a fundamental feature of the universe, then the cultivation of consciousness is not just a personal development project. It's the next stage of evolution. We have been operating under a materialist paradigm for several hundred years. The assumption that consciousness is produced by matter, that the brain generates awareness the way the liver generates bile. But this assumption is starting to crack, not because of mysticism, but because of the hard problem of consciousness. The fact that no amount of neuroscience can explain why there is something it is like to be you, why subjective experience exists at all. And if consciousness is not reducible to physical processes, if it is ontologically prior to matter rather than derivative of it, then everything changes. Then the question is not how to build better machines, but how to expand consciousness, how to access states of awareness that reveal deeper orders of reality. how to download information from domains that are not accessible to the rational mind. This is not science fiction. This is what shamanic cultures have been doing for thousands of years, altering consciousness through fasting, through rhythm, through plant medicines, through isolation, through ecstatic practices. And they discovered something. They discovered that consciousness is not a fixed thing. It's a spectrum. And different states of consciousness reveal different aspects of reality. The Western mind has been trained to dismiss this as superstition, but that dismissal is itself a form of superstition. It's the superstition that the waking, rational, egoic state of consciousness is the only valid state, that anything outside of that is hallucination, delusion, or pathology. But this is absurdly provincial. It's like saying the only valid way to perceive light is through the narrow bandwidth of the visible spectrum, and everything else is not real. The adaptive mind understands that there are modes of knowing that are not rational. There is intuitive knowing. There is embodied knowing. There is the knowing that arises in dreams, in psychedelic states, in deep meditation, in moments of creative insight. And these forms of knowing are not inferior to rational analysis. They are complementary. They access information that the rational mind cannot reach. This is the frontier. Not more data, not more computation, but expanded consciousness, the ability to move fluidly between different states of awareness and extract signal from each of them, the ability to integrate the rational and the trans-rational without collapsing into either reductionism or mysticism. Let me bring this back to the practical level. We are facing a series of civilizational challenges that cannot be solved with the same thinking that created them. Climate disruption, economic inequality, technological unemployment, the erosion of meaning in a post-religious, hyper-individualistic culture, the psychological impact of living in an always-on, attention-harvesting, algorithmically curated information environment. These are not technical problems. These are consciousness problems, and they require a shift in the fundamental operating system of the human mind. The mind that will be punished is the mind that continues to operate in separation. The mind that sees itself as a discrete entity, competing for scarce resources in a hostile universe. The mind that optimizes for short-term gratification at the expense of long-term coherence. The mind that externalizes consequences and then wonders why the world is falling apart. This is not a moral judgment. This is a description of a cognitive strategy that works in one context and fails in another. The atomized, competitive, self-interested mind made sense in a world of scarcity. But we are no longer in that world. We are in a world of potential abundance, constrained by coordination failures. And coordination failures are the result of fragmented consciousness. The mind that will be rewarded is the mind that can operate from a place of fundamental interconnectedness, not as a belief, but as a lived reality. The mind that understands that your well-being and my well-being are not separate, that the health of the ecosystem and the health of the economy are not separate, that individual consciousness and collective consciousness are not separate. This is not collectivism. This is not the dissolution of the individual into the group. This is the recognition that individuality itself is a feature of a larger system. You are a unique expression of a universal process. And the more deeply you understand that, the more effectively you can function. Here's what this looks like in practice. The adaptive mind does not hoard information. It shares it because it understands that value is created through network effects, not through scarcity. The adaptive mind does not see collaboration as a compromise. It sees it as an intelligence amplifier. The adaptive mind does not resist change. It surfs it. And most importantly, the adaptive mind does not derive its sense of identity from external validation. It does not need to be right. It does not need to win. It does not need to dominate. It is secure in its own being, and therefore free to engage with reality as it is, rather than as it wishes it to be. This is a radical shift, because most of human behavior is driven by insecurity, by the need to prove something, by the need to defend the ego, by the need to maintain a coherent narrative about who you are and what your life means. But that entire game is collapsing, because in a world of radical transparency and accelerating change, you cannot maintain a fixed identity. The conditions that would allow for that no longer exist. So you have a choice. You can resist this. You can cling to the illusion of permanence. You can double down on dogma and tribalism and identity politics, and you will suffer. Not because you are being punished by some external force, but because you are out of alignment with the way reality is moving. Or you can let go. You can embrace the fluidity. You can treat your entire sense of self as a work in progress. You can become comfortable with not knowing. You can develop the capacity to hold space for emergence rather than demanding predetermined outcomes. This is not easy. This requires a level of psychological maturity that most people have not been asked to develop, but the alternative is irrelevance. And irrelevance in a rapidly evolving system is a form of extinction. Let's zoom out even further. Humanity is not the endpoint of evolution. It's a transitional form. We are the bridge between biological life and whatever comes next. And what comes next is going to be determined by the choices we make in the next few decades. There are multiple possible futures. In one version, we create artificial superintelligence without solving the alignment problem, and we get wiped out. In another version, we retreat into neo-tribalism, nationalism, and resource wars, and we destroy ourselves through conflict. In another version, we successfully navigate the transition, we integrate technology with wisdom, and we create a genuinely post-scarcity, post-suffering civilization. Which future we get, it depends on whether enough people can make the cognitive leap I've been describing, because the technical challenges are solvable. We have the knowledge, we have the resources. What we lack is the collective will and the cognitive maturity to implement solutions that require short-term sacrifice for long-term benefit. This is the filter. Every intelligent species in the universe probably hits this point. The point where their technology outpaces their wisdom, the point where they have the power to destroy themselves, but not yet the consciousness to prevent it. And most species probably fail. They blow themselves up, they exhaust their resources, they fragment into warring factions. The universe is full of dead civilizations that could not pass this test, but it's not inevitable. The test is passable. And the way you pass it is by evolving consciousness faster than you evolve technology. You have to grow up as a species. You have to move beyond the infantile stage of development where you want what you want when you want it and you don't care about the consequences. You have to develop the capacity for long-term thinking, for systems thinking, for empathy that extends beyond your immediate tribe. And this starts with individuals. It starts with you. Because collective transformation is not a top-down process. It's an emergent phenomenon that arises when enough individuals shift their own consciousness. You cannot wait for governments to fix this. You cannot wait for institutions to save you. You have to become the change at the level of your own mind. This means doing the work. It means examining your assumptions. It means confronting your biases. It means sitting with discomfort. It means expanding your circle of concern. It means developing the capacity to think in decades rather than quarters. It means acting from a place of contribution rather than extraction. And it means understanding that this is not optional. This is not a personal growth hobby. This is an evolutionary imperative. The future is going to sort organisms based on their adaptability. And the human mind, as it currently operates in most people, is not adaptive enough. So, let me summarize. We are living through a phase transition. The cognitive strategies that got us here will not get us to the next stage. The mind that seeks certainty, that clings to fixed beliefs, that resists change, that operates from separation, is going to be punished, not by some external judgment, but by obsolescence, by irrelevance, by an inability to navigate the complexity of the emerging world. The mind that will be rewarded is the mind that can hold ambiguity, that treats beliefs as provisional tools, that operates from interconnectedness, that embraces continuous transformation, that can access multiple states of consciousness and integrate information from all of them. This is not about being smarter. This is about being different. This is about rewiring the fundamental operating system of your consciousness. And the time to start is not someday. The time to start is now, because the filter is already operating. The divergence is already happening. Some people are waking up to this. They are questioning their assumptions. They're expanding their awareness. They're becoming more fluid, more adaptive, more conscious. And some people are doubling down on rigidity. They're retreating into fundamentalism, into tribalism, into the comfort of certainty. And these two groups are going to have radically different experiences of the next few decades. One group is going to experience this period as an unfolding disaster. The other group is going to experience it as an initiation, a transformation, an evolutionary leap. The question is, which group are you in? And more importantly, which group do you want to be in? Because you have agency here, you have choice. Not over the external circumstances, but over how you relate to them. And that relationship, that orientation, is everything. The future will reward one type of mind. The mind that can evolve, the mind that can let go. The mind that can dance with chaos without collapsing into fear. That mind is available to you right now. Not as a distant possibility, but as a present capacity waiting to be activated. The only question is whether you have the courage to become it.